Hey guys, welcome to our review of Ultraman Zett, the full series review. I'm your host, Cinder Blaze, and today we have.
The Frozen Stratos?
Aresol.
Alright, thanks for joining us, Aerosol. I know we kind of roped you in for this one, but man, you know, despite the series having some really bad episodes, I think overall, I kind of enjoyed the experience. I think this is one of the this is like the series I watched after watching a couple of other series. So I'm kind of more knowledgeable about the Ultraman series, and considering this series kind of relies on referencing a lot of these other previous shows, and a lot of them do, but this is one of the first shows that I actually got a lot of those references as I was watching it. So I think because it was the first one I did so for it, I enjoyed the series a lot more than I expected to. However, there are a lot of issues with this show that I can just go on and on and on about, but let's start with some of the positives for this review. The characters. Ah, God, I love this cast a lot. What are your guys' thoughts on just the crew at Storage and Zett, if you can consider him a character?
I do not. Um, but as a whole, the characters were the strength of the show, and when it needed to, they leaned on those characters, and that's when the show worked. More times than not, they would lean on the characters, and that's where I drew a lot of my enjoyment from it. I I wouldn't necessarily say what you were saying, that there were a lot of bad episodes. I thought there were some fun, episodes that were very self-contained, and I thought that was fine. Like it happens with Sentai all the time. Um, I it.
Nah, those definitely a drop off. After the first half of the series, where they just had absolutely no idea what they were doing, and
Well, but they still brought in a ton of different directors, different perspectives, and told stories in very different ways, and it was really refreshing each week to sort of get something new um, out of it. Like
yeah,
the thing that stands out the most to me, like the departure that stood out the most to me, was the episode where they took down robot that is three things.
King Joe.
King Joe, yeah, yeah. When they were fighting that one, there were a lot of interesting I don't know, shots in that one. It felt a little scarier. Like there was a lot more tension in that one. So they were able to bounce around in terms of tone and pacing throughout the show, and it kept me on my toes, and it felt fresh.
yeah, it definitely had those
Yeah.
solid episodes.
I do really like the direction for this series overall.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we've had the main director, direct one of our favorite two-parters of Cure Major this
Yeah.
season. So we know that's something he's good
Mm-hmm.
at. um, but this show has had a lot of really interesting shots. It's whenever Sakamoto is on board,
Yeah.
he really likes to utilize the miniatures and the little model sets, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
I will always love that Ultraman does that.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah,
I feel like we got a lot of it. We get some of it in the older series too, but I feel like we got a lot more in Zed. Um,
yeah,
that was fun. That's
Yeah.
yeah.
I'd also like to say that um, it really highlighted for me because as much Rider and Sentai that I have watched, it's mostly like recent stuff, and only recently am I like latching onto, okay, who's directing this, what visions am I really looking at, and Sakamoto has been the most, I guess you can find his stamp on his stuff the most, so he was the easiest to
prolific.
prolific, yeah, and he was the easiest to identify. Like when you're watching a Sakamoto episode, you know it. So it was really cool to then see like, oh wow, I'm noticing, Aerosol, like you were saying, the main director of the show, and then also doing the Sentai episode, like, oh, I'm starting to notice the strengths of other directors and how those could then be used to move a plot forward, and not just Sakamoto's typical really high energy action and doing everything in his power to get each of the characters to a really cool fight. Because we do have those moments of with the main director of the series where we sort of sit in the setting and the I guess the scale of everything, and it took this to get me to notice another director, and I liked it. It was good.
Yeah, like those little shots. Like I remember, there was one shot where we had like three of the directors or like some of the production staff just kind of running throughout the city and just kind of watching the entire battle as it was unfolding, and little stuff like that. Like they had that consistently throughout the series, and it made those giant kaiju fights really enjoyable for the most part, and they've nailed it almost every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Even for some of the weirder forms gamma illusion, that's more of a special effect. It's not going to be as grounded as some of the other things, but they just had so much fun with the fight scenes in the series, and the way that they kind of showed some masterful execution and just kind of the camera movements, it gets you fully engaged in a lot of those fights, and even towards the finale of the series, man, they pulled out everything, the robot fights, the Ultraman fights, the aerial fights, they were everywhere doing every which thing, and we're just okay, you guys are good, okay, we understand, maybe the plot wasn't there, but at that point, who really cares?
Yeah.
Honestly, they had a focus going in the series, and that was just make it as fun and as neat as possible. Sure. And the way that they kind of tackled it in different ways throughout different episodes, as you were saying, it just kind of kept things fresh. Sometimes it didn't hit as well because we get tonal shifts and stuff like that, but it still kept the series as a whole kind of engaging. Mm-hmm. Even when it was kind of lacking in certain aspects. I think, I know for sure I have been complaining about Celebro forever, but who cares about Celebro when we got some weird mutant kaiju of the week, and then the way that they kind of manipulate multiple fighters, I haven't really seen too much of that in I mean, multiple fighters I've seen in Ultraman, but the robots, I haven't seen the robots team up with the Ultraman so much and so frequently. Mm-hmm. And just kind of it works, and the way they kind of scale the robots up to kind of match the Ultraman, and once they actually kind of surpass it, you're just well, shit, they actually did it.
Yeah.
In terms of, if you just watch it from, if you just watch the fights of the series as it progresses, you can kind of see the plot from those themselves, and that's pretty impressive.
And I will say, even though it did feel tacked on to be oh yeah, I really like playing this game with planets, it's a thing I do. I love poking and prodding them until they make a weapon big enough to kill themselves with. It's just fun. Even though that was it wasn't properly set up, the way they went through with it, the way they followed through with it, was, it really honed in on the characters, and unfortunately it came at the expense of Yoko having to be the damsel in distress for the final episode, but you really keyed into oh, these people care for each other. There are some really awesome emotional beats here. There was that rallying speech. You cared about everyone going into that final fight, and then the moment where Zett's on the ropes, everyone's cheering him on, and you feel that. Most shows, it'll be oh yeah, some just civilians that were watching before are now noticing, oh, they're not doing too well, let's cheer them on. But this, you actually felt it, and it felt raw and it felt real, and I liked it because we got enough time with all those characters.
Yeah, and I will say that while Cerebro's plan, like you said, it wasn't established super well. It did kind of just feel like he spewed it out at the end.
Mm-hmm.
It did nicely factor into the character's anxieties that we've seen established throughout the course of the series. Haruki having his breakdown mid-season, not wanting to kill monsters or do harm to people. But also Yoko, like her big moment during that little arc was talking about how she did want to have the resolve to do whatever it took, and then when finally given that power, this like immeasurable power, suddenly realizing, oh, this is too much, we should not have this. But it did, it did nicely factor into the past issues that we've had with the characters, which I liked.
It fits so well for the series as a whole. Like that whole power scaling, it was tacked on at the very end and just retroactively just worked with everything else, and it just makes me feel like if this was maybe introduced a little bit earlier, or just kind of set up a little bit throughout the series, then maybe it would have worked better. But with Ultraman, sometimes introducing the plot awkward times could just make it a little just wonky in general. But it technically did work, and seeing this kind of weak parasite doing all this mayhem and destruction just by controlling the right people and just triggering the ultras to fight the kaiju and just kind of get stronger with each battle. That was pretty good. He wasn't the best villain, but he was the right villain for this show. So I want to talk more mad shit about Celebro, but he got it done at the end,
he did come through, and there was it sort of gave it gave a really good conclusion to a character I wasn't expecting to get any sort of conclusion at all. And it was like, oh, hey, they found him. They found Celebro. And he's just a floundering starfish strolling about. They catch him, and Celebro's old host shows up, and he's just their friend. And it's fun. It's awesome that he actually has an opportunity to clean up his name and get back at the dude that basically screwed up his life. I
don't know. Cool. He just kind of put him in a coma for a few months. I don't think he really did anything to kind of besmirch his name, because nobody except Juggler knew.
Well, people called him a lousy worker.
He probably was. He had an entire video game setup in the lab somewhere. He was probably doing more good that way by distracting Celebro with all of his, games and whatnot.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for him, who knows what Celebro could have done?
Yeah.
Oh man.
But Celebro always reminded me of that first villain from Rube.
Oh, the one that was
which was also this parasitic alien that was controlling someone. And I always thought it'd be cool if it just was that same guy who moved on from whatever nonsense he was doing in Rube to being oh well, I got away, I'll just go over here and do this.
It was incredibly strange that Rube just sort of dumped its main villain halfway through
they just sort of brushed him out.
Yeah. And he was, I contend, the only good villain.
Yeah, it kind of sucks. It's well, we got to dump our first half villain, but he's so good. It's oh, but we got to do it.
Why though?
Yeah, but for this one, they had a bridging subplot in the middle,
Sure.
so it wasn't like too bad of a transition,
Hmm.
I would say. What do you guys feel about like the ultra cameos for the series? Because like they were very intertwined with the plot, or at least we thought so at the very beginning, especially with like Zero and
Hmm.
Jade. But Jade just came by for like a few episodes and he was just like out. Zero popped in for like one fight and he was just completely done. So I
I
think like, oh, go ahead.
I feel like all the team up episodes, you bring in the team up guy Sakamoto and you use him correctly. You don't use him on just any sort of random Saber episode that just has to get some plot across and have a cool fight. No, you get him for the team up episodes because he knows his shit and he will use every single power up they have in this awesome combo chain, and that's what you want out of a team up out of a team up episode. And like he will be able to get your characters to hang out and like actually interact and have a meaningful relationship. Um, and yeah, it just worked really well each and every time they had one of the major ones. 80
Yeah.
wasn't that great, but the rest of them were. Was it 80? Was
No,
no
Ace showed up.
Ace? Oh yeah, that
80s in the absolute
right.
conspiracy.
Okay.
yeah.
Um, I will say I did enjoy the first couple episodes that Jeed was in, um, because it looked like they were setting up like kind of bridging the plot he's got going on now into this, because he had that whole deal with how he was searching for the fragments of Belial's body and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot.
Yeah.
And I thought that was going to like intertwine with what was going on in Zed, and then it just never did. And that felt like a bit of a letdown. That said, it was always really fun. All three of the episodes that he showed up in, even the one where he was just stock footage, they were fun. They were all good episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember much about the Ace episode, unfortunately.
Yeah. Like the only thing I do remember was just like it was super red, but I do
Yeah.
remember like enjoying the fight scene because like they varied they varied things up. Like they showed like Ace was really good at like the beam attacks and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
with
he
you
did.
know
He did that like thing where he erected this energy wall and like started walking with it and on the side.
yeah. For Jeet's like cameo appearances, like I really wanted to see him more, but Jeet's already like really flaky as a person. So for him to just kind of be like, "Well, there's an ultra here. I guess I can just dip," like it made so much sense for him to leave that I wasn't upset that he was gone. And he doesn't look like he was going to get any more power ups. He didn't really need anything else.
Mhm.
He just kind of like dropped off his to Haruki and just like, I, you do you, man. So
I do like how his ship is just a flying remote control. That was really fun for me.
I I do, however, think it was a missed opportunity to not have Zero show back up,
yeah,
because all throughout the season, like Zero is Zed's master.
Right.
He's the one he looks up to. Never shows back up this season.
I
look,
mean, I did get the thought like anytime we did see Zero, Zet was a little bit of a thorn in his side. Like, all right, dude, we get it. You're new, you're young, you're a hotshot. Awesome, love it for you. Hey, I'm getting sucked up into this thing. If you could just take these medals and do something over there, that would be cool.
yeah,
And then he hops out of the black hole and he's like one of the first things he tells Zet was like, all right, cool your jets a bit. We're just gonna do this team up fight, and then I'm gonna get out of here. All right, cool, let's do this. So
yeah.
so it did really make it feel like Zet was this overbearing fanboy, and that's my headcanon, and I think it's very funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it kind of works that way. More like Zed kind of like proclaimed Zero as master and is just kind of like trying to emulate him as much as possible. Like he's good, and I'll give him that, but um, it's just like there's so many like references to like him being like part of that,
Sure.
lineage, not like bloodline, but just like the Seven to like Leo, Zero, like that whole like master to student kind of like lineage.
Yeah.
And for him to kind of just like not interact with them as much, because like that's the core of his character, I would say, at the very beginning, and it's something that we never really expanded on, and it just kind of like went to just like him and Haruki, and like him and Haruki didn't really have much interactions like at all, like maybe like once or probably 3 times in the entire series they actually like say something like meaningful to each other. So I kind of wish we saw a little bit more of that. Like it was really funny about like how Zett would kind of like tell G that like, hey, we're like, sibling pupils and whatnot, like under Zero. And G's like, nah, this dude was never my master. Can you please stop doing that?
But yeah, like I get what you mean. His personality really only ever came out when Zero was around, and then every other time he just kind of wasn't a thing. And it's unfortunate because like he's established as being this character that does need a lot of growing to happen.
Yeah.
And you'd think like, okay, team him up with Haruki, who also is going through a lot throughout the series, and maybe they can like learn, classic learn from each other kind of deal. Yeah. But then Zed kind of just doesn't learn anything. Even when Haruki's going through a breakdown, Zed is like, oh, well, maybe I'll take it into consideration. And then he's like not the one who helps him through it in the end.
Yeah.
And that stinks. That's like, that shouldn't be how it happened.
Yeah. It's weird because, like, he's not technically, his conscience, but he is the only one that can talk to him on a personal level. They are typically on any given day the only ones that can communicate with each other like that intimately, and the fact that you didn't really get any advice or confide in him in any meaningful way was a very they really missed an opportunity there. And to me it's like one of the major failings for this show, but it's not really something that like completely tears it down.
Yeah.
It sucks, but
Yeah. I was just like looking for a little bit more like growth in Zet's character, because like unlike Zero, I mean like Zero gets like movies and stuff like that, but like Zet has an entire series kind of dedicated to him, and we see like a lot of the kind of like not like flaws with like Zero's character, but just like like Zero's such a big personality, and that's something that Zet emulates in a very hilarious way. Like he demands Haruki chant his damn name every time they mention, and like
I think you're falling, dude. But you gotta give it to me. Both of you are falling. I can catch you. Could you chant my name?
Yeah. But like for Zero, when in his debut movie, like one of the things that they had like iron out with him, like he was like a hotshot, he was very skilled, but like he really needed to learn like that drive to protect like all like existence, basically. Like that was like your duty as an ultra, and you have to know and respect it. But that's something that like Ultraman Zet never really had to like go any trials. He didn't have to go for like any trials, to be honest. Like nothing that really like challenged him in a way that even Zero had to like do in like 10 minutes in a movie. Like if they gave him like a little bit like that, something to like curb him down just a smidge, maybe we can get some growth that way. But I guess we're just getting like not diet Zero, but oh god, well I said it,
I can't unsay it.
It makes too much sense now that I'm saying it. So that is that. As for Juggler, he was a fun character. I wish I watched Orb. We might be getting towards that pretty soon. But overall, he was just kind of like there to entertain the fans and not really contribute too much to the plot until like
Yeah. I really wanted more out of it. Because I have seen Orb, and I I understand the difference between this juggler and that juggler, and I really wanted to see like why he is here doing what he's doing now, because it seems like such a difference from who he used to be, and I don't feel like we ever really got a good explanation.
yeah.
He gave some, but it was mostly just kind of like hot air, more or less.
Like at that point, why don't you just like hard drag Orb into the series for a forced like team up and just like have them interact? Because like this series could have set up so many like crossovers because they're all kind of like dealing with like random shit falling into this universe, you know? Like that's the thing. Like random Ultraman is kind of like chasing that shit around. So it had the potential to kind of like have that Ultra. I think G came by and gave did he give like an orb one? Or was it just like Ginga and like random other ones? Because I feel like he would have given.
Jeet had, for his form, he had Ginga X orb.
Okay. So I guess that's the.
Is that what Zett eventually just used as an attack?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because for a while, we hadn't had that for so long. I was like, why is he only using these as an attack? Why aren't these a form? Oh, they were a form. Okay.
Yeah, they were just G's.
Yeah.
It would have been cool to see Zed do that, but
it would have.
I guess it wasn't in the budget.
Yeah. I mean, like, Zed had enough forms. I think that's one thing they did pretty well. Like, they're pretty distinct.
That's true, yeah. And, like, they didn't have too many. They didn't have too... Well, maybe one more, but like, it was weird that most of them were all within the same power level.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets one more for the movie.
Oh.
Because that's usually what happens. Why did he not get a Zeta form? Would that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Wait, no, I mean, unless his origin form is technically what you would consider Zeta.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe.
I could just be talking out of my ass.
Yeah. Origin forms for Orb, though.
Yeah.
Orb has a form called Origin.
Yeah.
Don't worry about
it. Well, I thought his was called Origin as well, or just original.
Oh, I don't know. I was just making a stupid joke. We don't gotta.
I mean, like, bad, and you should feel bad.
It wasn't that bad. You're just dumb.
Cool. Hello.
All right. Do we have anything else we want to like touch base on for this series?
No, I wish the writing was a little stronger overall.
Yeah.
I should say, because episode to episode, some were stronger than others, but there were plenty of episodic episodes that worked really well and were well written within the confines of that episode, but didn't contribute really anything to the overall story. That's a little bit of an Ultraman problem, I will admit, from the few that I've seen. So it's not exclusive to Zed, but it is something I would love to see get better. Also, I don't like secret identities, and I think they're pointless. Every time an Ultraman series does the secret identity thing, it just annoys me.
I mean, like, sometimes it would make sense, just in case, like, randos just want to get, like, the Ultraman power, and, like, we don't need to deal with that for the rest of the series or something like that. But for this guy, like, he's, like, a government official. Like, if anyone's going to be an Ultraman, like, it's going to be him. I completely forgot that it was a secret until like the last episode because like it just didn't matter at all, 100%.
Yeah.
But
before I forget, I really appreciated that, like, even though his dad was dead, he didn't have any daddy issues, and he was just a well-adjusted dude. I very much appreciated that.
Yeah.
I'm very much done with Toku daddy issues. We can stop it.
yeah, it was just like relatively like normal stuff,
Yeah.
like I think when he was like kind of concerned about like bearing the burden for, killing like the monsters, that he kind of like showed up and kind of like gave him
Yeah.
wisdom where, he needed it.
Yeah.
And that was it. Like he kind of like took that depth really well and just kind of like honored his memory by becoming a storage pilot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boom, bam. That's already done and over with.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Haruki being pretty well adjusted was kind of refreshing to see. We've definitely had.
I don't know if Ultraman has that issue, but I've seen it too many times elsewhere that I'm like, great. So glad I don't need to deal with this.
Yeah, I mean, like I enjoy his personality a little bit more than some of the other protagonists. Like,
Yeah.
even like Jeed. Like, for me, like I find Jeed like hilarious because of his lack of personality. Like, it's so bad, it's funny. Like, so there's that. But yeah, he just like worked well like the rest of the cast. I think actually there was like one character I think he had like pretty shit chemistry with, and that was Yuka. Because like Yuka's just like doing her own thing, and she's like in her own world. So when Haruki's just trying to like interact with her, it just doesn't work. He just kind of gets deflected off, and you just like saw it in that one episode they had together. That it just wasn't gonna be a thing from here on out.
I mean, I guess yeah, but also Yuka's a strong enough character just on her own that I'm like, oh, Yuka episode, that's fine. This is good. Every ounce of Yuka I can get is good.
I don't know. I feel like our focus episodes are garbage though. Like I think if there's any episodes like I hated from Jeed, it's probably her focus episodes because like they just didn't work. It's not because like I hate Yuka or anything like that. Like she's one of my favorite characters, but they just didn't end up working for those episodes.
Sure, it's almost like, with Ghost, wow, he has a terrible show, but anytime we see him in like a crossover movie or something, he works well because his character's good. It's just maybe the plot around him wasn't. I disagree. I did like the Yuka episodes, but I understand your point.
Yeah, and then we have like Bako, who's just like really solid for 90% of his episodes.
Yeah.
He was such a shitty.
But he's really racist against monkeys. He hates monkeys. And his daughter. He hates his daughter.
It's really saying something when the one focus episode that character got immediately soured all of us to that character for the rest of the series.
Like, it turned one of his quirks of him yelling at his underlings, yeah, from oh silly Bako to oh shit, Jesus. That's not okay. That feels very personal, and you are shouting, sir. You can take it down like all of the notches. That's not okay for you to be doing right now.
Yeah, that was quite the wake up call for all of us. That this man desperately needs help, and like if they didn't strap him into Sevenger in the finale, like he probably wouldn't have been redeemed in the slightest.
Like, oh no, that's not a quirk. That is an issue. That is something he needs to address in his own life.
Oh yeah, special shout out to Sevenger. You were the best boy.
Hell yeah, honk honk.
All right, are we ready to dive into comments?
Let's do it.
All right, we only got like a couple, so which one's up first?
John Hendricks.
John Hendricks. No even covering the clip show series. Dude, I wasn't even watching it until the very end. I would recommend just watching Tiga instead of having this clip show regurgitated to you. As far as my thoughts on Zed as a whole, I really liked it. Like I said last week, I probably put it in my top 3, but Corey is right about plot not being a super heavy factor in the show. Some Ultra series are more heavy on plot than others, but in general, I think a lot of the shows only have a major plot in the last few episodes. Ultraman's strength as a whole, especially with Zed, is in their characters. They are always delightful and can make a mediocre plot something special. I was disappointed by Zero and G not being more present in the show or even coming back for the finale. A friend pointed out to me if they did, it would lessen the impact of Zet and Harpy rising up in the end and growing as rookies if the other Ultras showed up and bailed them out of this one. While I agree with the sentiment, I still think it would have been cool overall. Probably solid 8 out of 10. Y'all should do a watch along for the previous show. I'd enjoy that. Yeah, especially considering that they're pulling a lot of things from that series for like the Ultraman movies. I'll probably take a look at it, but we'll see.
In terms of an Ultraman journey, I will defer to Alex to bring that to my attention as something that we should do.
Yeah.
Also, tagged on to that comment as a reply, Extra said something.
Oh, yeah. So Extra said, I've been watching them, or waiting for them to finish or watch along for 2 years, so I'd second them on watching an older series.
It has not been 2 years, has it?
It has been 2 years.
Or
basically.
Older than 2 years.
No. When we started it. It could not have been 2 years.
Yeah, Extra recommended it to us probably a while back, and we're just like, all right, we'll do it. And then we just stopped all of a sudden. We're probably busy with school or work or something along those lines. And
I remember distinctly anytime we'd be like, hey, you want to do Ultraman? Do you want to do anything else?
I mean, that was
watching it. Yeah, it's great, but sometimes it's that whole having a new thing on your plate.
Well, almost 2 years, but yeah, it's since February 1st, 2019 was the last episode you guys uploaded.
Oh my god. So it's we were adopting a new thing, and it was then we you got to get into the gear of it,
yeah.
But I'm sufficiently hyped for Ultraman, so maybe
Yeah, I'm pretty sure was it early 2019? I had to wake up pretty early, so you probably couldn't fit it into our schedule as well.
Sure.
I have to wake up earlier now, but I'm still figuring this stuff out. So we can probably do the orb, especially because we can just replace our set time with orb. And now that we're more invested in the series, I'm more willing to do so.
Sure.
Especially with Juggler showing up in Zet. I kind of wanted to see what he was all up in or doing in an orb. So
sure.
Keep your eyes out for that. It might be sooner than you expect. And by that I mean sooner than never. All right. So our next comment.
Comment still does come from Extra.
Oh yeah, from Extra. I like the series. I don't know if I'd call it one of the best, but I think it'll definitely reach the top 10 Ultraman shows. I've only watched 3, so this is definitely in my top 3. Two main things that this show excelled in were the characters and the cinematography. There's some absolutely fantastic shots in the series, and the sense of scale was conveyed so well. I'd even say better than any Toku show ever. Anyways, while not having an overarching plot isn't necessarily a bad thing, I wish we had a more serialized story in the show. There are a lot of things that were hinted at that never really got any development. Granted, this was mainly due to the main writer dying before finishing the series. However, it's still a disappointment. Speaking of disappointments, Celebro. He completely failed at being a compelling antagonist, but oh well. That would be a more major issue if this was a plot-heavy show, but to be honest, we really didn't need a main villain for a series like this. So to wrap up my thoughts, overall, it was a pretty good season. It wasn't very original, but you always know you're in for a good time when you watch an episode. 7 out of 10. Also, what did you guys think of this series compared to other Ultraman shows that you've watched? So, Rube, in your case, Corey.
Better than me, Rube.
Rube shot itself in the foot so hard, and when you're seeing it bleeding, it's God, even that cool monster form at the end just didn't save it. For this one,
I'm a little more positive on Rube. I do, however, hate the ending. So
No, like Rube was like really enjoyable for like half the series, and then once they like took care of our first villain, it could not find its pacing. Like it was so lost.
Like
But
he
for the
was to me like the main Ultramen were fine. They were good dudes. They were nice to hang around. But like I was there for the villain. He was awesome. He was a good time. And then they got rid of him
yeah,
because I don't know.
I,
And then they did something else.
yeah, like
Why?
those main characters were so for me they were like boring. Um,
Yeah,
and they needed the villain to make them interesting.
I agree. Yeah,
And
because
without
he
him,
challenged them and like actually served as a good foil to making them good Ultramen.
yeah. But for this
there's a
series,
lot that I could say about this, but we're still in Zed.
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
um, I think it's better than Genga. Genga's still bottom of my list. Um, I don't know as far as like rankings. I've compared it a lot to X throughout these videos. I would say it's probably right there with it as far as how much I enjoy it. I think this series is a little longer, so
yeah,
and I want to say overall maybe the ending and how it tied back into everything else that was going on had a little bit more impact. So maybe a little
yeah,
bit better.
yeah. They tied him in decently at the very end. I hated that form though. Freaking the Stratos was ugly. Looked
Oh
like
yeah.
a misshapen bat or something. Like
The
God,
strudels.
the Stratos.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's true.
Only reason I remember his name is because it's a Yu-Gi-Oh card. That's it.
Oh.
A banned
That
one
tracks.
as well.
All right, hey, Corey from the future here. Alex doesn't know that I'm recording this, but we had enough late comments for Kira Major, and I screwed up on enough comments for Kira Major that Ultraman also had some late comments. And considering this is the final review, the very last review we're going to do on Zett, I did want to make sure to get some of these comments in, make sure to get them noticed. So this last one comes from Heroic Gangster, who says, I like the series, but man, I really do wish it got some better coverage of the characters and the world that has to live with such powerful mechas. Makes me sort of wish they had done something more like Pat Labor with the mechas doing more, doing some more things other than action, but considering they really cramped conditions the show was in but considering the really cramped conditions the show was in, this show was pretty dang great when it comes to the action and how it fleshed out the characters a bit. I really do wish, though, that Ultraman Zett had more coverage, though, other than being a symbolic hero for humankind, because every Ultra is that anyway. To what you're saying about the powerful mecha and having them be around in society, they did have that to start out with, but as I feel like as the urgency of the oncoming threats rose, they didn't have time. They could barely keep up production with these robots, and that was due to our main villain poking and prodding at the humans until they made something deadly. So in a way, they were led into that path, and away from being able to use these mechs for construction, for anything else. And like I said, when we rewatched the Restorage episode, we got to see Scavenger was not only for combat, but he was able to do standard labor like removing debris and whatnot. So anyway, he goes on to say, I honestly do think Haruki and Zett really could have been the same person, and it would have made Zett more interesting and have personality or something. And honestly, Zett felt like he never really learned and processed anything and was just going where the wind takes him. Like, he doesn't really have an interest on the conflicts going on and is just made to fight. I do hope the movie addresses this weird sense of existence Zett has in the stories he takes place in. Oh yeah, this show is great. Is this what being a critical Toku fan is when watching a show in broadcast time? Because, man, I sort of feel like I'm more critical of Ultra shows when I watch them week by week. That's interesting. I feel like, you know, on some level, being asked your thoughts really makes you think deeper about what you liked and didn't like and how things could have been fixed. So I feel like, you know, maybe we're just in a mindset to be critical and to think critically. And I'm happy to open this arena to everyone else. So thank you for your comment. But once again, guys, everybody, 10 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, the day that the watch along goes up. Please, 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 because, you know, these happen the day after. Like, we record the watch alongs at, you know, I'd say 10 p.m. and then the next day we record the reviews at 10 p.m. So please, 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 10 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Anyway, let's head back into this very long episode.
All right, well, that's it for a full series review. I don't want to make this too long, so we're just going to end it right here. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Check our description for everything that's down below, and make sure to keep it juicy. Okay, you were making some like weird like motions. Like, did I mess something up?
No, you said I don't want to make this too long, and then I was like, oh, maybe I should look at the 42 minutes.
Perfect.
It's still wild to me that the first one we watched and finished was